In Lagos, Nigeria, on the edge of the Atlantic, stands a gigantic project no one thought was possible. This is the Dangote refinery, a $20 billion bet to change the course of an entire nation's energy future. It's the largest single-train refinery in the world, capable of processing 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day. A project so massive it promises to make Nigeria, which by the way is Africa's largest oil producer, fuel sufficient for the first time in decades. At the center of this story is one man, Aliko Dangote, Africa's richest man, a business titan and for years an unshakable force in Nigeria's economic landscape.
One of the biggest issues that we've had in Nigeria is everybody was sort of relying on oil. And with that, for us, it benefited us even quite a lot. We're building a refinery and petrochemical.
Dangote has long enjoyed a close relationship with the Nigerian government, and it's no secret that his businesses, from cement to sugar, have all thrived under favorable policies and presidential favors. But recently, something changed.
There are a lot of concerns about supply of petroleum products nationwide, and the claims by some media houses that we're trying to scuttle Dangote refinery.
Despite years of mutual back-scratching between Dangote and the federal government of Nigeria, a rift has emerged. A rift so deep that it now threatens to derail one of the largest industrial projects in Africa. So, what happened? Why did the relationship that propped up one of the world's richest men suddenly turn sour? It has to do with oil, the black gold that has become a curse to many black nations across the globe. It's already common knowledge that Nigeria produces about 1.5 million barrels of crude oil per day. Yet, the country relies on imported fuel to keep its economy moving. This strange paradox has fueled corruption, inefficiency, and dependence on foreign fuel supplies, a combination that quickly becomes crazily lucrative when you add fuel subsidies. Now, with Dangote's refinery set to solve that very problem, a certain powerful force is saying no, and the company is instead fighting for its dear life at the center of a fierce battle. A battle not just for control of Nigeria's oil now, but for the future of its energy independence. But here is where things get really interesting. In the same period that Dangote's fight with the gatekeepers of Nigerian energy market escalated, Nigeria's fuel imports from a tiny Mediterranean nation surged by over 4,000%. Suddenly, all eyes turned towards this country, with allegations that Nigerians, including some powerful figures within the NNPC, owned blending plants there. This begs the question, what's really going on in this Mediterranean nation? Who are these private interest groups allegedly working against Dangote? And why is Nigeria's fuel imports business suddenly booming just as the Dangote refinery is about to roll out its products? Too many questions, I know, but just this last one. Why are fuel prices going up just at the same time that Dangote's product is hitting the market?
We know where they blend this in. Some of the terminals, some of the NNPC people, and some, traders have opened a blending plant somewhere off Malta. We all know these areas. We know what they are doing. It's not that we don't know. And really, like what I said, I've been fighting all my life. Somebody now said, okay, Mr. Dangote, I heard that, some people came to your hotel to ask of your name and you don't know who they are. I say, yes, they did. But look, I am a very, very fearless person. I believe so much in God and I don't fear anybody.
In the 1970s, Nigeria was undergoing a transformation. The streets of Lagos were alive with the hustle culture that has come to define Nigerians. In this environment of change, one man began to carve his path. Not with politics, not with power, but with business. Aliko Dangote. At the time, he wasn't the richest man in Africa, nor the billionaire we all know him to be today. He was just a young man with ambition. In 1977, Dangote began his journey by establishing a small trading firm with which he traded commodities. Soon, he found himself dealing in goods such as cement and agricultural products like rice and sugar. But while others were in business for survival, Dangote's sight was set on domination.
We are going to start investing, in the United States just after this project. We want to open a family office, both in New York and in London. We already have an office in London which has been operating for the last 30 years. So we want to turn part of that, as a family office so that we can diversify the wealth. As you know, I've discussed this with you before, where, sometimes in Africa you have issues of devaluation,
His big break would come in the 1980s when the Nigerian government, looking to protect local industries, began restricting imports. This was Dangote's opening. He would go on to secure exclusive licenses to import commodities like sugar, rice, and most importantly, cement. But he wasn't content just trading these goods. He wanted to control their production in the country. Dangote's real genius wasn't just in selling products. It was in understanding how to control the market, essentially building a monopoly. By the mid-1990s, Dangote had moved from being a trader to being a producer. Cement became his crown jewel, and soon enough, he dominated the market, producing more cement than anyone else on the continent. He was a man who understood that to truly win, you don't just play the game, you control it. But Dangote's success wasn't just about timing or business acumen. It was about something else, something called connection. And no connection would prove more critical than his relationship with Nigerian leaders. Over the years, Dangote would become a fixture in the corridors of power. The federal government of Nigeria consistently supported Dangote's businesses. Presidents called on him for advice. Governments granted him special favors. And in return, Dangote built an empire, one that spanned cement, sugar, flour, and more. In 2003, Dangote's political connection would take him to even greater heights. You see, Dangote had supported President Olusegun Obasanjo's campaign financially during his re-election bid. This gesture gave Dangote a somewhat unique position within the Obasanjo's administration. In one instance, the president allegedly asked him a question that would go on to change the entire course of his business.
Before Baba's second coming as president of Nigeria, there was actually nothing at all like a billionaire in Nigeria in dollars. But Baba targeted to create 50 billionaires, but I think he couldn't succeed in creating 50, but maybe he created 30. But it's not only about creating that. One of the things that we really need to look at is that during Baba's first term, Baba had actually opened up the economy, where before the economy was actually controlled by foreigners, like many other African countries. But in Nigeria, if you look at the economy today, it's fully controlled by Nigerians and also by the private sector.
The Nigerian government would go on to restrict imports, and Dangote flooded the market with his cement. With no competition and having the government behind him, he rapidly became the largest cement producer in Africa, amassing unimaginable wealth in the process. But as Dangote's power grew, so did his ambition. His next move was bold. So bold in fact that it would set him on a collision course with Nigeria's most powerful industry, oil. In 2013, Dangote announced his most ambitious project yet, a $19 billion oil refinery. Location, Nigeria.
The 650,000 barrels per day that we've done is the largest single train, not only in Africa, in the world.
For context, that's more than Nigeria's daily fuel needs. His goal was to end the country's dependence on imported fuel and become a key player in the global oil market. It was a dream so big, so daring that many didn't believe it could be done. But for Dangote, It wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The question was, could one man, even Africa's richest man, change an entire industry? Could Dangote, whose fortune had been built on monopolizing industries, now transform Nigeria's most sacred and contested commodity, oil? If there's one thing that's consistent in Dangote's story, it is his relationship with power. Over the decades, Dangote has proven that to succeed in business, especially in Nigeria, you need more than just a good product. You need influence. And Dangote had it in abundance. Let's go back to the year 1999.
I, Olusegun Obasanjo.
Nigeria had just transitioned from military rule to a democratic government under President Olusegun Obasanjo. It was a new era, and Dangote was quick to seize this moment for himself. Obasanjo's government was looking for ways to boost local industries, and Dangote offered the perfect solution. His businesses were the key to Nigeria's economic revival. But it wasn't just about business now. Dangote was deeply involved in the political machinery of the country. Aside from funding the re-election campaigns of Obasanjo, he contributed millions to the construction of a presidential library and supported various government projects. In return, Dangote got something priceless: access.
First of all, he woke me up, Baba is used to calling people at 3 or 4 in the morning. And when you pick up the phone, he said, "Oh, sorry, did I wake you up?" I said, "No, sir." Then you continue to talk. He said, "Okay, please, Aliko, is it possible that you see me 7 in the morning?" I said, "Your Excellency, I'm sorry, I'm in Lagos, sir. But I'll try and come early in the morning, sir, before you leave the house to the office." To cut the story short, I went there and I met Baba early in the morning after his morning prayers. And he said that, "Look, Aliko, I'm getting really a little bit disturbed." This was 2002. He said, "Aliko, what are we importing today as, in terms of tonnage in cement?" I said, "Baba, it's about 7.5 million. What are we producing?" I said, "We are producing about 1.7. But why?" I said, "Sir, because it is more profitable for us." Well, first of all, I said, "Sir, can I remove my cap of business and put the Nigerian cap so that I can advise you better?" And Baba said, "Okay, well, what is it? How can we make this impossible?" I said, "Sir, it is possible if you make sure that you link the money that we are making with building new plants. Unless you invest, you will not be able to import." And that was the regulation that Baba brought in, I think in October 2002.
He got access to the highest levels of government, where policies were made, deals were struck, and industries were shaped. This symbiotic relationship would continue through successive administrations. President Goodluck Jonathan's tenure saw Dangote appointed to the government's economic management team, giving him even more influence over Nigeria's economic policies. Under President Buhari, it was no different. Buhari's government supported Dangote's refinery project with tax breaks, duty waivers, and favorable land allocations. It wasn't just support, it was a full endorsement. The Buhari government saw Dangote's refinery as a solution to Nigeria's long-standing fuel crisis. You see, for decades now, despite being one of the largest oil producers in the world, Nigeria had been importing nearly all of its refined fuel. Dangote's refinery promised to bring a solution to this mess. For the average Nigerian, fuel shortages, price hikes were a part of daily life. The government spent billions of dollars on subsidies to keep fuel prices low, yet the system was plagued with corruption and inefficiencies. It became a scheme that turned politicians and their cronies into billionaires. Every few years, the debate would resurface: should Nigeria remove fuel subsidies? Should it privatize the oil sector? But nothing ever changed. The Dangote refinery was supposed to be the answer to these problems. It would process crude oil right here in Nigeria, eliminating the need for fuel imports, and in theory, making fuel cheaper for everyone. The government was all in on this project, and why wouldn't there be? It was a win-win, or so it seemed. You see, unlike sugar, flour, or even cement, The energy sector in Nigeria is a high-stakes game. It touches every aspect of daily life, from transportation to electricity, and most importantly, fuel prices. Now, what we've come to learn about high-stakes games is that there are always cabals involved. So, as Dangote's refinery project moved closer to completion, whispers began to emerge. Whispers of resistance, whispers of private interest, whispers that not everyone wanted Dangote's refinery to succeed. Dangote, who had dominated every industry he touched, is now coming into the energy market. The cabals, both local and international, became worried that he would monopolize the sector. Government officials began voicing concerns that a Dangote monopoly in the energy sector could be dangerous. It is too much power in the hands of one man, they said. But the question was, who would benefit if Dangote failed? When Aliko Dangote announced his plan to build the world's largest single-train oil refinery in 2013, everyone took notice of this. It was a project of unprecedented scale. At a projected cost of $19 billion, the Dangote refinery would be capable of refining 650,000 barrels of crude oil per day. And this was enough to meet Nigeria's domestic fuel needs and still have surplus to export. This would mean an end to fuel importation, which would also mean an end to the unsustainable fuel subsidy that has made the national oil company broke. The stakes were enormous. For the government, the refinery represented a chance to finally make something of its forex rather than spend it all on fuel subsidies and be left to rely on debt to carry out its activities. Also, Nigerians who had to endure fuel shortages, price hikes, and uncertainty for years now looked to Dangote to solve this problem for them. But as Dangote refinery geared up for full-scale operation, something strange started happening. Behind the scenes, the real conflict was starting to surface, one that involved not just the government, but private interest groups and fuel importers, many of whom had a vested interest in keeping Nigeria reliant on foreign fuel. For years, they had made billions from fuel imports, and the Dangote refinery was a huge threat to their business. For Dangote, his nightmare started with accusations by the oil regulators that the petroleum products that he was beginning to roll out into the market were inferior to the imported products. This public statement, which caused uproars among Nigerians, didn't sit well with Dangote either. Why was the government demarketing a business it has a stake in? In a counter-allegation, Dangote made a startling claim. During his famous July 2024 press briefing, the African billionaire accused private interest groups of actively working against his $20 billion oil refinery. According to him, these groups had one goal: to ensure that Nigeria remains dependent on fuel imports. He pointed fingers at a network of businesses, politicians, and individuals who, for years, had profited immensely from Nigeria's reliance on imported fuel. These interest groups, Dangote claimed, was deeply embedded in the country's energy infrastructure. He also revealed to Nigerians how the Nigerian oil company, NNPC, had failed to keep up with its obligation as regards the agreement to pick up a 20% stake in the Dangote refinery. The businessman further revealed how he was struggling to get crude oil for his refinery, even though the NNPC had promised to supply crude to him initially. There were also allegations of international oil companies selling crude to him at a premium, reportedly $4 above market price. The plot was to cripple this refinery even before it took off. As all of these were happening, some international groups were working hard to discredit the Dangote refinery. One even reached out to award-winning investigative journalist David Hundeyin in a failed attempt to get him to write an article against this refinery.
I thought that it's in the public interest. People need to know that there are external interests that have some sort of a stake or some sort of an interest in the preservation of the energy poverty that Nigeria and West Africa have historically faced.
According to Hundeyin, there are powerful groups in Nigeria who would prefer to see Dangote's refinery fail. These are individuals and companies that have made billions from fuel importation, and they stand to lose everything if Nigeria becomes self-sufficient in refining its own fuel. They don't want competition, they just want the status quo. But you know what was most interesting? The timing of it all. While Dangote was battling for the survival of his $20 billion investment, Nigeria's fuel imports from Malta, a tiny Mediterranean island, skyrocketed by over 4,000% from nearly zero to over $2.08 billion worth of fuel in just a few years. Dangote had alleged that there was a connection between Nigeria's rising fuel imports from this small European country and private Nigerian interest groups operating blending plants there. But why Malta? These allegations about Malta were as bold as they were specific. Personnel within the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, were alleged to be involved in owning or operating blending plants in Malta. These were facilities where oil is mixed to meet specific standards before being shipped back to Nigeria. These blending operations in Malta had been running under the radar for years with little oversight. The fuel they produced wasn't always up to standard, but that didn't stop it from being shipped to Nigeria and sold at premium prices. Now, if such operation truly exists, then it's safe to assume that for the people running these operations, a functioning Dangote refinery would be disastrous. It would cut off their supply chain and destroy their business model. One of the names the media ran with as being part of this blending operation was Oando, one of Nigeria's largest oil companies. Oando was accused of being linked to blending plants in Malta. One other company alleged to be involved in this mess and connected to Oando was Razhanzi. Interestingly enough, this company was also implicated in another oil scandal in Africa a few years back, this time about oil smuggled from Libya. Anyways, for Dangote, this was more than just for profits for a few cabal in the energy sector. He began accusing private interest groups of deliberately sabotaging his refinery project. He claimed that powerful figures, some within Nigeria, were benefiting from Nigeria's dependence on these fuel imports and were doing everything within their powers to prevent his refinery from succeeding. It's good to remember that Dangote wasn't just building a refinery, he was challenging an entire system. A system that had enriched a select few at the expense of the entire country, and that system wasn't ready to go down without a fight. Well, the NNPC and his officials denied these claims, with Mr. Kyari daring Dangote to produce the names of officials involved in the scheme. Oando PLC, a major oil company, also found itself caught in the crossfire. They issued public denials that it was ever involved in any Maltese blending operations. But the allegations had already caused a stir. Nigerians were beginning to wonder, could Dangote be right? Was the country's own oil corporation working against its biggest industrial project yet? What really happens in Malta? Now, the question is not whether or not blending plants exist in Malta. The question is whether or not Nigerian individuals or companies are involved in these operations. And while direct evidence is hard to come by, the timing of the surge in fuel imports from Malta is highly suspicious. For years, the small Mediterranean island had been a hub for fuel blending operations. The concept was simple: mix different types of fuel to create a product that could be sold at a higher price. By blending low-quality fuel in Malta, traders were able to sell it to Nigeria at a markup, all while bypassing regulations. This was a lucrative scheme and one that would be severely threatened by the Dangote refinery. For the traders involved, this was more than just a business, it was a gold mine. By keeping Nigerians dependent on imported fuel, they were able to maintain control over a critical part of the supply chain, and as long as fuel shortages persisted, the profits kept rolling in. But Dangote's refinery, once fully operational, would be able to meet all of Nigeria's domestic fuel needs, effectively cutting off the need for fuel imports from places like Malta. And for those who had built their fortunes on those imports, that was a huge problem. Well, All those accused of being part of this operation have issued public denials, claiming that Dangote's allegations were baseless, and some even said that there were no blending plants in Malta and that they had nothing to do with fuel imports. I guess their denials brought all scrutiny to an end instead of investigations. For Dangote, however, the fight continues.
On the pricing, I can't say anything because we don't control the pricing. The pricing at the moment is controlled by NNPC.
The Dangote refinery, which was supposed to bring down costs, isn't going to make fuel any cheaper for the average Nigerian. Dangote had reportedly struck a deal with the government to buy crude oil in naira instead of dollars, a move that was supposed to make the refinery more competitive. But just a few days before Dangote was to roll out his petrol, the Nigerian National Oil Company hiked fuel prices again. The promise of cheaper fuel has been broken, and for many Nigerians, it feels like yet another betrayal. From all indications, the battle isn't over. It's only just begun.